Hello, BookTube, and welcome to ShakeTube 2017. That's a very informal Shakespeare read along event created by Lukash over his channel and Curtis at Curtis Books and Films, uh, in which they pick a baker's dozen Shakespeare plays and do one a week until early December. The play this time around is Shakespeare's famous comedy, Much Ado About Nothing. Uh, and it's been, as usual with ShakeTube for me, it's been as much fun watching the videos as it has been rereading the play. Quite a few people with any Shakespeare play I'm learning in the course of ShakeTube 2017. Quite a few people can be counted on to be encountering these plays for the first time, and that's always fascinating to me. Shakespeare is something. His works are things that I've read so many times and seen so many times in so many places on stage and on film that the idea of encountering Much Ado About Nothing for the first time, it's utterly fascinating for me to watch that happen in other people. Uh, it can really teach you a lot. It can make you go back and think about your own reactions to the play all over again, which is wonderful. Uh, for me, Much Ado About Nothing, it's an extremely polished comedy. Uh, Tricked lovers, uh, a duel of wits between a man and a woman, uh, one-dimensional heroes, one-dimensional villains. Everything comes right in the end. It's an extremely slick comedy. I think that's why it's so popular. It's been popular forever. Uh, but for me, despite the fact that it's absolutely proficient, there is nothing wrong with it. For me, it underscores that I don't think Shakespeare was completely comfortable writing comedy. I see that in every one of his comedies. They are all of them, in one way or another, straining to be tragedies. And they can't quite do it because he knows what his audience wants. But still, look at Much Ado About Nothing. Look at how bad uh, Don Pedro's brother wants to be a villain. He says it himself. He clearly knows he's not in the right kind of play. uh, and and look at the dark undercurrents that run throughout the play when a a typical comedy of manners, you would expect it not to flirt in that direction the way this does. I do actually remember the first time that I encountered Much Ado About Nothing. I encountered it on stage rather than reading it for the first time, and I didn't know how it was going to go. I honestly didn't. I didn't know whether or not, because of the rumblings throughout the play, something horrible was going to happen at the end. Uh, I don't think that a lot of Shakespeare's jokes really work. I don't think that a lot. I think that a lot of his uh, comic gimmickry is strained and forced. I think his register was elsewhere. His natural register was elsewhere, uh, which is why it's always struck me as understandable that a lot of his comedies, most of them, aren't don't have much in the way of comedy in them. There's almost nothing in Much Ado About Nothing that's funny, and not anachronistically either. That would have been funny in its own time, amusing, yes, but not funny. Dogberry's the only funny thing in the whole play, aside maybe from uh, the cleverness of the back and forth between Beatrice and Benedict. Otherwise, uh, it, uh, it never really impressed me all that much. All the times that I read it, all the times that I saw it on stage, I thought, okay, it's a smooth by the numbers period comedy, and if you put it on a Shakespeare bill, in Leeds or Kuala Lumpur or wherever, I will go and see it. But it won't be the first thing I would like to see. I won't hurry. Uh, and then I saw the film adaptation in 1993, I think it was, by Kenneth Branagh, and whew, I I have to assume that since there are a lot of you out there who haven't read Much Ado About Nothing until now, until ShakeTube 2017, that there are also a lot of you out there who haven't seen that version, who haven't seen that movie. In my opinion, Kenneth Branagh is the greatest director of Shakespeare who's ever lived, and his Much Ado is incredible. It is incredible. It takes the play on its own merits and does miracles with stagecraft and even acting. Although it's is unlike the play. The play, I think, is another one of those plays that Shakespeare wrote that really is flawless. There's nothing. You look at it and there's nothing actually wrong with it. There are no threads hanging out. Whereas in Branagh's movie, in all of his Shakespeare adaptations, there is always a flaw, and it's always the same flaw. At some point in every one of his Shakespeare adaptations, he lets unconventional casting get the better of him and introduces into an unbelievably solid cast someone who is not just a novelty casting, but weak. Someone who shouldn't be there, not because they don't have a history with Shakespeare, but because they can't handle it. And on the surface, at a glance, you might look at the cast of the 1993 Kenneth Branagh version and think, well, surely that's Michael Keaton. A stand-up comedian, an actor in small comedies. It's every single video, every single day, every single video, every hour of the day and night. But anyway, looking at that cast, you might automatically think that it'd be Michael Keaton. But no, Michael Keaton is extremely capable. You put a camera on him, you'll get what you want. And no, the weak spot is Keanu Reeves, who just doesn't have any place in a Shakespeare movie. I don't think I've seen much examples of him having a place in any movie, but in this, he's just bad. That's all. That's all there is to it. Better by far to get Sean Patrick Leonard to play the villain and get some other guy to play the one-dimensional hero that he plays instead. But one way or another, since we might be dealing with people here who haven't seen it, I wanted to spend most of my time with Much Ado About Nothing. There isn't really much to say about Much Ado About Nothing. It's extremely enjoyable. There's nothing thought-provoking about it. There's nothing disappointing about it. There's nothing really thrilling about it. I've noticed in video after video on BookTube a distinct lack of that. that feeling you get when you walk out of a Shakespeare play, the reading of a Shakespeare play, and the world is a little different, and you're not quite so sure of yourself anymore. And I've seen so many examples in ShakeTube already of people turning on the camera and still capturing the last vestiges of that look. There's nothing like that in Much Ado About Nothing. It will never cause that reaction in anybody. But the movie is amazing. And acting on the assumption that a lot of you maybe haven't seen it, I want to urge you to do so. A friend of mine years and years ago pointed out to me something that I hadn't noticed until she said it, which is that the opening of Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing is one of the most unabashedly erotic sequences ever caught on film. She's absolutely right. I had loved it because it's an amazing cinematic opening. It's an amazing opening to a movie. Even better than the opening to his Henry V, which, if you haven't seen it, is subversive and super intelligent and really works. It's just Derek Jacobi in a trench coat backstage in a theater in the dark. You see the props, you see the lights, the curtains, the boards. That's how he introduces this play, which will be enormous, which will be expensive and panoramic. I was tremendously impressed by that, but the beginning of Much Ado blows it away. It's like some sort of 19th century painting. In scene after scene after scene after scene, it must have been the devil's own work to get it to look the way it does. And it's a sign of perfectionism, because the scenes are just flawless. I love it. Of all the things that Branagh has done, all the sequences, all the scenes, I can't think of anything of comparable length by him on film that I've liked better than that opening. The rest of the movie is wonderful too, except for Keanu Reeves. In fact, Michael Keaton is great as Dogberry. But that opening, I don't know if it exists cut off from the movie, separate, alone on YouTube. I should check. But if it does, don't wait until I don't know if it's on Netflix either, but don't wait until it is, or until you rent it or buy it at some sort of store. See that opening. just to start with. It actually takes its place in a long tradition of theatrical and cinematic Shakespeare openings that don't have much that expand on what you get in the play, and to wonderful effect. Uh, so so that's my reaction to Much Ado About Nothing. My worry, ironically enough, my worry this time around was that I would have trouble having enough to say, that I would have trouble not talking too briefly about Much Ado About Nothing. And if that was my worry this time, the mirror image is my worry next time. Because next time we do Richard II, I'm going to have trouble restraining myself from talking for 2 hours. But well, I'll see you then. There's a lot to talk about with Richard II, and there are some moments like the ones I was talking about that are what I've always considered real Shakespeare. So we'll get to that next time. But in the meantime, go and see the Kenneth Branagh What You Do if you haven't already. You owe it to yourself. Make some popcorn and enjoy yourself. And I'll wrap it up there, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.